Oh, what's up, Dragon Brood? So, today we're gonna have some story time while I give you a little bit of a history lesson. It might actually surprise several of y'all. But, for starters, this happened. I sent somebody a card that I sold them, actually, and they received it in the mail and thought they had a counterfeit. And now, don't get me wrong, this is actually the proper way to deal with counterfeits, to cut them or deface them in some way, and then if you choose to send it back to the person or the person still wants it, it keeps them from being able to send out another counterfeit. So I don't really mind this in general, but what they didn't realize is once I got it back and realized what it was, this is actually worth more damaged than the actual version they wanted. So, let's get into story time and let me educate you about alternate 4th edition, the magic set you probably don't know exists. So for starters, alternate 4th edition was released by the US Playing Card Company. The way I understand it, there was some type of short-term test printing or something where they were going to try to print magic cards for them. Now, there's a long understanding that Wizards of the Coast had like printing deals for a while with Cardamundi, and Cardamundi eventually bought the US Playing Card Company, I believe back in 2019. But the US Playing Card Company is actually a respectable company, and at this point I believe they've been operating for over 140 years, so they've been around a while. But at this point, they were trying to print, I believe, Magic the Gathering cards and Vampire the Masquerade, if you remember that game, because that was a very short-lived but interesting game nonetheless. But anyway, these cards actually ended up with different features and characteristics than actual Magic cards. They were produced, just never were supposed to see the public eye, I guess. But some of them did get out into the world. And my understanding is their booster packs don't actually exist, but they did actually have starter sets of 4th edition, which is where some of these cards came from. And I want to show you a few differences as to how you can tell if you own alternate 4th edition versus regular 4th edition. Alright, now first off, if you look at 4th edition versus revised or 5th edition, like the way you can tell them apart is that you look for the copyright date down in the lower corner. If it has a white border and it's English and it has a 1995 date, there's realistically, that's your shot, it's going to be a 4th edition card. Kind of easy to tell. However, it gets more complicated when you're trying to say what makes an alternate 4th edition card versus a regular 4th edition card. And this is where it can be difficult to tell them apart if you don't know what you're looking for. Because first off, the texture is very different on these cards. If you feel a regular 4th edition card, it feels a little glossier than it does rough, and the alternate 4th is going to feel a little bit rougher than it does glossy. And oddly, a little bit thicker. And this is likely due to the printing process that the US Playing Card Company had versus, at the time, the Cardamundi factories or whatever were using that Wizards of the Coast was partnered with. So that gives you a little bit of a different feel right off the bat. But again, you kind of have to know what you're feeling and what you're looking for. Otherwise, it just feels like counterfeit material. Let's take a look at the backs of the cards. Now, if you look at the A for sure compared to a regular A, and even the I to some extent looks a little bit different, but the A is the most obvious indicator. If you look at the upper right part of the letter A in the word magic, it actually appears to be a little bit darker, whereas on regular versions of magic cards, it's a little bit lighter. So if you were to look at that initially, you might think, oh, this isn't actually a magic card, this is some weird counterfeit that somebody got wrong. Actually, as it turns out, the only cards I've ever seen like this are the alternate 4th edition. Not even the counterfeits go the extra mile to try to look like an alternate 4th edition thing. Actually, to the point that I've had enough people actually over the years think that there was some counterfeit 4th edition versions, not realizing they actually had alternate 4th edition. So that's one way. However, here's another cool thing that people don't know. So let's put the cards in a pile, and I will just shuffle them up. I have a handful, just a few alternate 4th here I had handy. But we're going to shuffle these in with some regular 4th edition and revised cards. I also need to turn out the lights so this makes a little more obvious sense for you. I happen to have a blue light, or don't know why I have or black light, I guess some would call it, but I'm not really sure why I own this, I just do. But anyway, it's a good way to check for cards quickly, because if you'll notice, the reflections on the regular versions are much brighter under black light than the alternate 4th edition ones. And this actually means if you're going through them quickly, you can see where you just have dead spots effectively in your light, and those cards are all the alternate 4th edition cards. Now, why is that? Well, as it turns out, the US playing card company actually was trying to do a good thing, and they added a UV coating to the card so they wouldn't get damaged as easily by the elements, which actually makes a lot of sense. However, it made them completely different than the actual Magic cards that we'd seen through production at that point. So, yeah, problems. Makes sense, right? But it's a thing. To my understanding, that's a process or a coating they have on most of the cards they produce. And by the way, the US Playing Card Company, again, is totally a legit company. I mean, they make all the bicycle playing cards and stuff you see everywhere, practically. So, yeah, this is just like a weird circumstance of businesses over the years where they had an agreement and some things worked, some things didn't. And for whatever reason, and to this day, nobody that I know of, except for maybe some people who no longer even work at Wizards of the Coast, probably even know why these were never put out to the public or why the company never took over. Or honestly, what's the reason that they didn't just say, hey, go back and make them like this and then just print cards for us? Because again, it's a huge factory that was stateside that would have been able to produce them for them, but for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Now, this brings us back to the beginning of the story where we talked about how somebody cut a card and send it back. Now, some people think like, oh, that's so egregious. How could somebody send it back, ask for a refund? Like, the reality is the card itself wasn't very expensive. And I have some others, obviously, with a Bird of Paradise and a Veneral's Disc or whatever, that are worth more money as an alternate 4th edition version. But a Will-o'-the-Wisp isn't going to break the bank. And honestly, I was only refunding him a couple of dollars because that's what a 4th edition one would be worth. But as it turns out, he actually sent me back a damaged alternate 4th. So in a weird way, it's actually worth more damage than the actual card he was trying to get in the first place. Which, fair win for me. I didn't realize I even had this in my collection. Somehow I overlooked it when I was listing stuff and sending things out. That happens. And to be fair, my friend that helped me pack stuff up, she had no way to know that this would be a different edition. This is such an awkward thing that even long-standing, long-term Magic players have no idea what the differences are in these two versions. For all they know, they may have actually owned some, traded some, bought some, whatever, and not had any idea. I mean, I know actual vendors and card dealers that don't know the differences because they're not super plentiful. I mean, in my entire time of collecting Magic cards, I may have actually owned like 10, maybe, and I've handled literally millions of Magic cards. So they're not the most common thing you're gonna come across, but kind of cool when you get them. So anyway, go through your cards, grab a black light, see what you got. Might surprise yourself. And honestly, don't be too hard on people that think they have counterfeits when they don't, because I get it. People are paranoid. Nobody wants to get ripped off. It's one of those things that if you just don't know, you don't know. But it is a cool thing to know. So let me know in the comments, how many of you actually knew about alternate 4th edition, or how many of you own any, or is this a whole new thing you're just learning about? Also, do you like these types of videos? Because this isn't my typical content, but because I had a scenario come up, I thought it would be a cool time to share a story and hopefully educate y'all about a cool thing that maybe you could, one, make sure you actually don't have a counterfeit and you have more money, or maybe just go through your collection and make more money. But either way, let me know. As always, join the channel for as little as 99 cents. Support the channel. Like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. That always helps out. And that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.